Hi, I'm Rahel Philipose, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express News Show. In this episode, we talk about the debate between the old and the new pension scheme and the kinds of reforms the Indian pension system needs. We also talk about a new missile system which will help India kill low-altitude aerial threats at short ranges. But first, we talk about cracks in Karnaprayag. While Joshimath is already dealing with sinking houses and roads, another city in Uttarakhand reported wide cracks on the roads and fissures on the walls of houses. Residents of Karnaprayag, a city about 82 kilometres from Joshimath, said that these cracks started appearing almost a decade ago. And in the last 1 year, the cracks have widened. But the local administration did not take any steps to address these cracks and gave them a small amount of money for repair work.
ये दिक्कत ये आ रही कि फट रहा सब मकान फट रहे हैं सब ये 1 साल से ज्यादा ही फट रहे हैं प्रशासन के बार्जी थी सर उन्होंने 5,000 रुपए दिए 5,200 रुपए दिए बस उसमें क्या होता है.
And now, after seeing the situation in Joshimath, they're scared for their future and their homes. The Indian Express's Avaneesh Mishra, who visited Karnaprayag and spoke to the residents there, joins us in this segment to talk about the situation. So, Avaneesh, can you first tell us a little about Karnaprayag?
Yeah, this place is on the border of Chamoli district and it is around 80 to 82 kilometers from Joshimath. And people have been it is situated right next to the Alaknanda river. So it's on the river bank and this is next to the main road from where people come from Srinagar and go to places like Joshimath and places like Badrinath. So yeah, this place is right next to the highway and next to Alaknanda river.
Right. And residents there have reported cracks on the roads and the walls similar to the situation in Joshimath. So, can you tell us how bad the situation is in Karnaprayag at the moment?
Most of the cracks are happening in Bahuguna colony, which is right next to the highway. And a lot of people are saying that these cracks started appearing in 2013 and only last year they got much bigger and wider. And there are around 24 houses which have been complaining about these cracks, and a lot of residents, at least half a dozen residents have left their houses. Most of the tenants living in these houses have left, but those who own the houses do not have any other option but to keep living in the houses. I mean, the administration has made some temporary arrangements, but a lot of people are still living in those houses and are pretty scared.
So, some houses started developing cracks since 2013. But why are they being talked about now?
Yeah, you are right. People are saying that some of these cracks started happening in 2013, but only last year these cracks started getting wider and much scarier. But what the people are and the locals are saying that they tried to inform the local administration about such a situation, but because these were just a few houses, around 24 houses, they are making accusations that the administration did not listen to them. And only after the news about Joshimath came to the media and everybody in the country and even outside the country started talking about this thing kind of gained attention, and the administration is now listening to them, and this thing came to the main media.
Okay, so the residents are claiming that the administration didn't listen to them when the cracks started appearing. But now that this has been widely reported, can you tell us how the administration is handling the issue?
I have talked to Chamoli district magistrate because this particular place comes under Chamoli district, and what he told me is that they are aware of the situation and they have already made temporary arrangements for the affected families to live in the nearby Nagarpalika premises. And he also claimed that they have already requested IIT Roorkee experts to study the area, evaluate the damage, and find out what has been causing this. The IIT Roorkee has also been asked to provide a project report on how to solve the issue. But as of now, there has been no large-scale relocation of people as it is happening in Joshimath. And only now, because the thing is coming to the media, the administration has kind of starting paying much more attention to this place.
Avaneesh, you mentioned that the local administration asked IIT Roorkee to find out the cause behind these cracks. But some residents blame these cracks on a mandi building and other construction activities in the area. So could you talk about that?
So the place where all these houses are situated, there was a mandi, which is a market, was built in 2013. The construction is started in 2012 and it was completed in 2013. And what these people are saying that only after the mandi was built in that place, these cracks started appearing. However, what I have seen, the mandi is not such a huge building or any huge construction. It is just a normal, there are some small rooms, there is a floor made, and there are small constructions. So I cannot say with full certainty that both the things are connected. But what the people are saying that the cracks started appearing in their houses only after the mandi was constructed, and they are relating both the incidents.
Right. And are the residents scared that they'll have another Joshimath on their hands?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they are scared because both Joshimath and Karnaprayag are in the same city and they are just 80 to 82 kilometers apart. So there is a possibility that, I mean, there might be something connecting both the places because these are also the places from where a lot of construction activities are happening because of the Char Dham project. The Char Dham Karanprayag railway line is also might be a connecting factor.
Okay. So regarding Joshimath, ISRO's National Remote Sensing Center released a report on Friday which showed that a rapid subsidence event was triggered in the town and the area sunk by around 5 centimeters in just 12 days since December 27th. And this is because of heavy construction in the area. Successive governments were warned against heavy construction in Joshimath as it is an unstable region. But they took on the projects, one of which you mentioned, the Char Dham project. Now, all of these culminated in a huge crisis that we've been seeing in the last couple of weeks, right? So, can you tell us a bit about the latest developments in Joshimath?
Relocation work is going on in Joshimath also. And so far, 782 houses have witnessed cracks and 148 of the houses are kind of identified in a danger zone. And around 223 families with 754 people have been relocated to other location. Earlier in a cabinet meeting, the government also decided that the monthly amount which they will be providing as rent was increased to 5,000 rupees from 4,000 rupees. And the government is kind of moving towards the next step, which will be permanent relocation. And they are trying to make a policy on how they are going to provide permanent relocation to the people who are affected by the land subsidence in Joshimath area.
And Avneesh, is there a chance that we may see this kind of subsidence in other places in Uttarakhand as well?
Only after we came to know about these cracks appearing in houses and on roads in Joshimath, similar information is coming from a lot of other places also. In Chamoli itself, as we are discussing Karnaprayag, there are also similar situation in Gopeshwar also. In Tihri Garhwal, there are some villages in Narendra Nagar locality. Then there is Munsiari and Dharchula in Pithoragarh. Even in Srinagar, some of the villages have been complaining, like making similar complaints in the past. So there are a lot of places and I'm hopeful that the state government and the geologists and the experts will look into this and there might be something bigger going on under the plates or under the tectonic plates under Uttarakhand. So yeah, this is something which must be looked at and similar information is coming from a lot of other places also.
Next, we talk about the debates between the old and the new pension schemes. On Friday, the new Congress government in Himachal Pradesh reverted back to the old pension scheme or OPS, which means that the state government employees will now be getting pensions according to the old pension scheme.
तकरीबन 1,36,000 के करीब ये सरकारी कर्मचारी हैं जिनको ओल्ड पेंशन स्कीम का लाभ आज से मिलना शुरू हो गया है.
The OPS was discontinued by the central government in 2004. Since then, the topic of pension has become an important debate in Indian politics. It was also a highly debated issue in the build-up to multiple state elections last year, including in Himachal Pradesh. The Congress party had promised to revert back to the OPS if they were elected, and now they've kept their election promise. But what is the debate between the old and the new pension schemes? And does this debate really capture the issue related to pension completely? In this segment, the Indian Express's Udit Misra joins us to explain what's missing from the old versus new scheme debates, how sustainable and adequate the current system is, and the changes that are needed. So, Udit, can you begin with a brief explanation of this old pension scheme versus new pension scheme debate?
Yeah, so the difference between the old pension scheme and the new pension scheme is that the old pension scheme, the government employees typically get all the pension from the money that the government has, whereas the new pension scheme is one in which their own salary is sort of parked off, some parts of it is invested and is a forced saving, which will be sort of given to them later on. And that reduces the burden on government finances. So the old pension scheme was dropped essentially because it was financially unsustainable. But the problem with the new pension scheme is that a lot of people who join the same services find that the benefits are not as high, the pension benefits are not as high or as lucrative, and so there is obviously resentment on that front. There are worries that the new pension scheme will not yield the kind of pensions that will sort of support basic minimum lifestyle that people may want to have. So that's essentially the bone of contention. And those opposing Congress on going back to the old pension scheme are like maybe the ruling party in BJP is sort of saying that, you're using a populist method to get power in the short term, but it will be financially ruinous for the government finances.
Okay, and what do you think is missing from this debate?
Yeah, so I think, what was odd for me to find is that while there's focus on these two issues of choice between the old pension and new pension, very few people understand that as a country overall, our pension systems are very poor. They are hardly there. And this whole debate is only about less than 12% of the elderly, and they are cornering around 62% of all the money that goes into these pensions. According to some of the research that we've read, we find that at least 85% of the current workers do not have any pension scheme. Current workers, as in people across the board, not just government, because it appears as if only people who are working in the government are getting old and need pensions. But the fact is that everybody, even outside the government, is getting old and would need pension. So the focus right now is only on government employees and not on the very stark nature or lack of pensions or pension system outside the government system. So the idea is to understand where does India stand overall and what it needs to do, because that would sort of inform whether we should choose OPS or NPS, or if we need reform, what kind of reform we need within the pension system.
And Udit, where does India's pension scheme stand in a global context?
Yeah, so, India has typically been ranked very poorly in terms of pension systems. There is something called the Mercer CFA Institute Global Pension Index. And according to the 2022 results, we are ranked, I think, 41 out of 44 countries. We are ranked in a category below which there are only just 3 more countries. And they basically look at, they create this index based on 3 subcomponents. They look at whether the pensions that are provided are adequate for people, whether the financing of it is sustainable, and whether there is an ecosystem where companies can be regulated properly, so that they pay up. So adequacy, sustainability, and integrity, these 3 components over which they check different countries. And countries like Netherlands, Israel, UK, or US perhaps have much better scores. Netherlands and Israel at the top end of that list. But countries like India, Indonesia really fail in that test. The Indian pension systems are neither adequate nor sustainable, and the integrity level is also low, which means that the quality of regulation is also poor. So overall, India's ecosystem when it comes to pensions is actually quite poor, and we need broad-based reforms. By focusing only on the debate on OPS and NPS, we are sort of missing the larger point about the fact that we need to reform our pension system.
Right. So the index you mentioned, the Mercer CFA Institute Global Pension Index, it also talks about the sustainability of pension schemes in various countries. So, what does it mean, and how is India doing in terms of this concept?
Yeah, so sustainability is essentially this question that can the existing systems continue to deliver, notwithstanding the demographic and financial challenges. Now, the question there is, in India's case, very few people actually get pensions. 85% of the workers don't have any pensions. Those who have the pensions, as I said, government employees, they are, as of now, they're just less than 12% of the elderly, and they're cornering 62% of the government finances going into pensions. So it's a very lopsided thing. If you think in a global sense, government's first responsibility when it comes to its finances would be to sort of help the poor, those who have no income and who cannot perhaps save enough for their old age. And we find that the data shows that bulk of the money actually goes into giving the money to government employees and not so much for maybe helping the poor or creating some kind of a co-insurance kind of a framework where both the government and the employee pay up and save for the future. So the sustainability question comes in from the perspective that you're spending too much on a very small sliver of employees and not bothering about everybody else. And if you continue doing this, then not only will you fail to actually pay up for all these employees because you will run out of money, but you would also run into a larger problem where a lot of people do not have money when they grow old.
And Udit, can the sustainability of pension schemes depend only on a country's government?
So no sustainability can come by just focusing on the government. Part of it is also to do with, you'd have to be a richer country to actually generate those kind of revenues. So you'd find that the countries which are scoring high on sustainability are also overall richer economies where people are earning more so they can save better. Their economies can generate enough returns over long term to promise them returns in the post-retirement. Governments also have good sources of revenues. So that is one part of the thing that, it's not just the government, but government themselves have better revenues, but also that the broader economy produces better results, produces more economic return. Whereas in India, and this goes back to the inequality question in India, that, we often talk in terms of GDP, we talk in terms of growth, but the growth is not distributed equally. So to say that GDP has gone up by 9% or 10% doesn't necessarily mean everybody's incomes have gone up by 9%. And that distribution of growth may be so lopsided that a vast majority of people may not have saved enough, may not have earned enough, may not have saved enough. And that all accumulates over a period of 20, 30 years that by the time people retire, they don't have enough. So that is where the sustainability problem comes. And it reflects on the kind of economy you are. If you are a very iniquitous economy, you will have these kind of problems because then the role of government will become even more important because there's so much inequality that everybody would look towards the government and say, you give us the money because we didn't earn enough. So that's part of the problem.
And in the end, we talk about a new missile system being developed in India. The Defense Research and Development Organization is developing a very short-range air defense system or VSHORAD. This system will help India defend itself from low-altitude aerial threats at short ranges. To know more about the missile system and how it will boost India's defense capabilities, we speak to the Indian Express's Amrita Nayak Dutta in this segment. So Amrita, can you tell us what is the Very Short Range Air Defense System or VSHORAD?
So VSHORAD is a man-portable air defense system which has been designed and developed by the DRDO. Now VSHORADs are there in other countries as well, but the latest one that we are talking about is the one that has been developed by DRDO, and it is meant to kill low-altitude aerial threats at short ranges. So that is the main purpose. So what happens at the borders? Oftentimes there are low altitude aerial threats, for example, helicopters, drones, a lot of enemy UAVs which are flying pretty close to the borders. And what happens is this VSHORAD, which is a man-portable, which means portable by man and hence has to be extremely lightweight. So these VSHORADs are deployed at the borders so that they can quickly fire and take out those aerial threats that are there in the air.
And can you explain how this missile system will help India?
In a couple of ways. I would say the specifications of the missile, these are exactly not known, but the DRDO had said it is a man-pad, which means it's portable by man. And it is extremely lightweight compared to the other missile systems in the Army's armory at present. What's most important, that this missile system can be deployed in the mountains. As you would know, in the mountains or in the northern borders, in the eastern borders, which are full of hills, there are hardly any roads, there are hardly any infrastructure. So it is very difficult to carry very heavyweight missile systems in such areas at the borders. So when this lightweight missile systems come, it can be easily deployed to the mountains at a very short notice. So this will fill up a critical gap in the Army's inventory at present, especially for the northern and eastern borders, as compared to the Akash systems, for example, which are comparatively much heavier.
Right. So you mentioned that the system is being developed by the DRDO, which means that it's being developed indigenously. But wasn't India in talks with Russia under the Vishwarat program already?
Absolutely. Since 2018, India has been in talks with Russia to procure the Igla-S air defense missile, which is again under the Vishwarat program. And these were to replace the Russian Igla-M air defense system, which was already in use with the army. Now, what happened in the last 2 years, as you would know, there is a very strong pitch for self-reliance in defense. So there is a kind of a blanket ban on import of defense equipment. You would have seen that the Defense Ministry had come out with 3 positive indigenization lists, which means you cannot import those products beyond a certain period. So, in short, there has been really a kind of ban on import of defense system unless something is extremely critical and has to be procured immediately and India doesn't make it immediately. So, Vishwarat is one such thing, this deal with Russia. This has been put on hold for the time being, and the latest AON, or the acceptance of necessity, which was granted by the Defense Ministry for this indigenous Vishwarat system, makes it somewhat clear that the deal with Russia for procurement of Vishwarat may not go ahead.
Okay. Also, Amrita, this comes against the backdrop of the India-China conflict along the line of actual control. In fact, there was a skirmish along the LAC in December as well, when Indian and Chinese soldiers clashed at Arunachal Pradesh's Tawang sector. So, did these clashes have an impact on this decision to develop a new missile system?
Absolutely. This was in the pipeline for a very long time, so I would not say it was fueled by this decision, fueled by the clash, because as I told you, since 2018, in fact, since 2010, we've been trying to procure it. The first time the RFI was floated, the request for information, that was in 2010. And since then, the defense procurement process is very long and complex. So it is only in 2013 that Russia came down, Russia was selected. And since then, we have been in talks with Russia. So India has been planning to procure the Vishwarat system for a very long time. But definitely the tensions at the LAC would have played the role in expediting it to a certain extent and helping the government take the decision to at least accord the acceptance of necessity for the domestically made Vishwarat. So it did have an impact. However, this is a very long process. Even the AON is one of the first initial steps in the long capital procurement process for defense procurements. And not necessarily that every equipment that gets an AON will necessarily make it into the final order. So yes, it did play a role, but I would say not entirely.
Right. And can you tell us when they are expected to be inducted?
So the thing is that AON is just the first step, and all AONs do not make it into a final order. But in the current situation, if we take the situation in LAC and the absence of a quickly deployable man-portable air defense system in the borders, we do have a good amount of air defense guns for the western borders, but for the eastern borders and for the northern borders, this was lacking. So if you look at the current situation and the tensions, there are high chances that the government might expedite this procurement process very soon. And if with the support of the industry, if the industry is able to make it and develop it soon, then defense officials estimate it should be there in the next 3 to 4 years.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was hosted by me, Rahel Philipose, and written and produced by Utsa, Sarmin and Anwiti Singh. It was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone who you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.